Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for listening to We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by your friends at Watson Consoles. To show our appreciation to unsung heroes of public safety, we're offering the Dispatch community a free gift. Visit watsonconsoles.com/badge to claim yours.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch. If we're speaking dispatch, folks, we're talking right to you. And hopefully you're listening and telling your friends, hey, go listen to that podcast, because guess what? We've got over 22,000?
Over 22,000.
God. Podcast plays and in 40 countries. So we're all over the place. And if you're not listening or you just started listening, man, you missed out on a lot of stuff. So I'm just saying. So, all right. So we got our usual suspects here. We got Jill over there. We got Joe down there. And we got John over there. Hi, everybody. You all ready?
Hey. Good to see everybody.
Good to see everybody. All right. And we got our special guest today, which we met in Nashville at the FOP over there. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself and what organization you've got.
Sure. My name is Stephen Powers. I'm originally from Maryland. I live down in North Carolina now. Me and my wife started a nonprofit, Buddy Check, back in, I guess it would have been the summer of 2020. And basically what we do is we provide proactive education to first responders, as well as like a warm handoff to vetted resources that have been vetted by various agencies in the FOP as far as for mental health and addiction concerns.
Wow. And it really kind of fit with that premiere of the movie we went and saw, the PTSD 901. Such a good movie, and then kind of led right into what you do and all that stuff. So, and you guys said, how long have you been in business? What would you say?
Since about summer of 2020 is when we got started, kind of with the COVID and some of the defund the police movements. My original plan wasn't really to start this until I formally retired. But unfortunately, we don't determine the timeline. I guess that's up to a higher power. And I started receiving a lot of phone calls and messages for people reaching out for help, kind of the atmosphere and the climate of policing and first responders in general. So kind of just moved up the timeline. I retired from a police department here in North Carolina back in November of 21. And I'm just trying to dedicate a little bit more time to trying to get that word out there, trying to end the stigma associated with mental health. And if I can touch just one person, it's worth it.
That's very cool. It's nice that you kind of are paying it back. I mean, you're paying back your career and all this stuff. But how did you come up with this idea of the buddy check? I mean, what was it like? Something happened to you, or is there somebody you know, or what?
Yeah. A little bit about my story. I grew up in a not the perfect household. My biological father was a little bit rough, so I got some trauma as a child. Graduating high school, I went in the Marine Corps, where I was exposed to a little bit more things. And then I started my law enforcement career in Charles County, Maryland. Worked for the sheriff's office there for a couple of years until I moved down here to Charlotte. And throughout my career, obviously in law enforcement, firefighting, EMS, dispatch, everybody is exposed to those calls, day after day, shift after shift, month after month. Here in North Carolina, we're supposed to do 30 years in order to get full retirement. And because I was that bullheaded Marine, man of the house, big bad police officer, I never really took care of myself after numerous bad calls. Chose to become kind of a butthead in my family. I lost a lot of relationships with friends and neighbors. And it wasn't until I attempted to take my life that sort of my whole way of thinking sort of shifted.
Wow.
I had a good friend that was a police officer out on the West Coast. He attempted to take his life. I was able to get him some help a number of years ago. And he sort of was my rock along with my family when I was going through a lot of my stuff. And because obviously he was there for me, and as I was there for him, I realized that obviously doing these jobs, being a first responder in general, you can't do this alone. You've got to share your experiences. You got to vent what you're hearing, seeing, tasting, all that good stuff. And as any good Marine, I sort of stole a term from the Army battle buddy. I would always say when my kids were younger, we were on vacation, you know, where's your battle buddy? You can't go anywhere without your battle buddy. You got to take somebody with you. And from there, it kind of morphed into that buddy check. And all a buddy check is literally just reaching out to somebody, whether it's FaceTime, phone call, text message, Facebook direct message, whatever, and just asking how they're doing.
Mhm.
You know, you never know what somebody may be going through, because as first responders, we are the helpers. We're not the helpees. You know, we're probably not going to reach out for that help unless we have some sort of experience with it, or we have a history of it and we've already reached out once or twice.
Right.
And you never know. You know, you never know what somebody's secretly dealing with. A lot of times, depending on those relationships, you don't know what somebody may be going through, some marital problems at home or a death of a loved one. And just a simple phone call could literally change that direction, as it did with me when my friend called me from out west.
I just wish a lot of agencies kind of had that same thing years ago. Unfortunately, they did not. And I had a friend of ours commit suicide, and he was the happiest guy I've ever met in my life. And it was so sudden and so out of the blue. But none of us were ever like to even talk to about how to talk to somebody and say, is everything okay? I mean, I'm sure if we would have, he probably would have shared something, but
and in my case, I still don't know if I would have shared personally, because again, I am that stubborn, bullheaded. I have to be the man. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I realized a guy out west, my buddy, who was also a Marine, he was a very good Marine. So when I saw him starting to reach out for help and going through some process, it sort of opened my eyes. Wow. Suicide has sort of always been, I've always been surrounded. You know, I had a family member attempt to take his life when I was a child. You know, I've had some loved ones, you know, go down that dark hole. Mm-hmm. A guy in boot camp when I was in the Marine Corps attempted to take his life.
Really?
And
wow.
Throughout all that, again, thick-skulled, throughout all that, my way of thinking was, what's wrong with that person? What is wrong with that person? Yeah. And it took a very long time for me to shift my thinking to what's happened to that person. Yeah. It said the average first responder sees, you know, somewhere between 700 and 800 critical incidents in their career. Most people, most citizens may see 20-ish. So, you know, day after day, shift after shift, we're getting exposed to that. Society outsources all their trauma to us. You know, when all else fails, what do we do? They call dispatch. Yeah. And I've heard plenty of stories of some crazy calls, and I've always had sort of a respect for dispatch, because you all don't get the closure. Right. You know, unless you send a message or unless you call the officer, you don't really know how that call ends, because you're already had 7 other calls. You know, and you don't know, you know, you don't know how that closure happened. Yeah. At least us on scene, we do have that closure. We are able to sort of see the outcome. So that's always been something I've sort of always looked up to y'all, that y'all are able to 8, 10, 12-hour shifts and not get a whole lot of closure. Yeah. That would break me.
Well, Joe, do you guys have anything in place that's something like this? You know, your agency, John or Joe, either one.
Yeah. One of the things that our agency did, and I'm in the transition of leaving the agency, but I'm really proud of it, is that we implemented a peer support team and a critical incident debriefing team that was agency-wide. The thing that brought it to the forefront, in my opinion, I think we were working on it before it happened, though, is we did have an officer commit suicide. And so it did bring it to the forefront. And one of the things that I would say is, looking back at that, I think that training needs to take place for 911 managers, not only on the fact of, am I still there? Okay. Yeah. Not only, I'm blurping, hold on. Good. Not only on the fact of training for the manager so that they can handle the situation, but also so that they can get their dispatchers the help that they need. Yeah. We may be an expert on how to take calls, how to dispatch calls, how to do all this stuff. But if we're not trained in how to handle major events, every agency that I know of will say you have an EAP program, or you can go get help this way or that way, or whatever it might be. But we need some internal people to better assist the dispatchers, because, like Steven has said, We're also a little bit stubborn sometimes and may not be willing to ask for help ourselves. So if we can
A little.
speak the same language, support, and be that buddy check for our own internal people, that may help 911 progress in the future.
That's cool. What about you, Joe or John? What about you? What did you guys have at your place? Did you have anything in place, official or training, or? Because I agree with Joe. Management never gets this kind of training to recognize something or refer somebody. They always just say, "We have EAP, use that." Well, that's super, but it doesn't always work like that. So what?
We did to what Joe and you said. Yes, EAP is certainly available, and I have heard from people who have used EAP, at least at my agency, which is a county benefit through usually an insurance company, have been quite pleasantly surprised in the outcome of using it for a variety of reasons, not just mental health, because EAP is very all-encompassing. But that can help. One issue can help with the mental health of an individual. Just relaxing something. So in addition to that, yes, we still do have an in-house peer support program. A lot of it has changed over the years. It kind of got revamped, I'd say, over the last 3 or 4 for good. And last I knew, we were pursuing state-level certification.
Wow, really?
To pursue kind of like what law enforcement does. We were a full 911 center as its own county agency, not part of a law enforcement agency. So for Stephen, we were not, like if you worked at Charles County Sheriff, we were not part of the Sheriff's Department. Okay, so we were our own entity. But we can pursue, we fall under criminal justice programs because we dispatch and take law enforcement calls where they can pursue such accreditation.
Sure.
And Stephen, going back to, I have a question here. You mentioned, offering resources that are vetted. What kind of resources that are vetted do you offer, particularly those for dispatch?
Sure. Well, there's most people have heard of Safe Call Now. There's Cop Line.
Yeah.
There is. Let's see if anybody has access. You go to the NC or the FOP webpage, and they have a tab at the top where they can click resource. You can whittle it down to the state or whatever. And then I also always recommend Psychology Today. You can go on psychologytoday.com. If somebody's to that point where they're ready to sort of reach out and sit down with somebody and talk. Again, you have every filter you can imagine, sex, age, specialty, because the other problem that first responders face is culturally competent therapists or counselors. I can only speak for myself. The first couple counselors I went to, I made them cry when I thought I was supposed to sort of do the crying. I've had them ask me to leave, my firearm in the car, and it's very difficult to get those culturally competent therapists, counselors, mental health professionals that sort of understand our culture, because we're a different breed, And
what I think's funny, well, we did this at my agency I used to work for, big, huge state agency. They brought in outside people to talk about stress, but they had no clue what we do. And really the stuff they were offering was like, we can't just do that. We can't just get up and walk around and say, I'm gonna go take this a break. And I'm like, what is this person even thinking? They're not even part of our agency to say, like, we know what's going on. And it's like, it was just basically nothing for any of us. A lot of people complained about it and said, we really don't get like training on what we're supposed to say or do if it's affecting somebody who works with us. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to deal with it on 901, and we've all had those kinds of calls, but it's different dealing with it, somebody in person that's sitting next to you or somebody or whatever.
And that's where the awareness part comes in. There is so many free trainings online. Obviously, all these conferences, like the FOP puts on a conference. You go to these conferences and sort of just absorb that knowledge. And it does not take a master's level licensed clinical social worker education or anything like that to literally just talk to people and be honest with them. I don't know what we're going to do, but I can tell you, you do not have to walk this journey alone. I will go with you. Let's figure out who we can call, and sit with that person in that situation, because when somebody has finally gotten to that breaking point and somebody is seriously considering taking their life.
Yeah.
Literally just having somebody be there with them is everything. And
So do you make the calls? Do you, Stephen, make the calls yourself to individuals? Or do you facilitate?
I have, or I facilitate.
Okay.
Depending on if I'm on the phone with them, I'll grab my wife's phone and try to call somebody I know. Throughout this journey, I've definitely made a lot of friendships and connections to various people in various parts of this country. So it's nice to be able to say, "Oh, you're in Florida? Give me 1 second. I'm going to call Doug." Doug lives an hour away from you. I've called people to drive to that person while I've kept them on the phone and talked to them.
Well, what is it you exactly offer? What is Buddy Check actually? I mean, are you like a bunch of people together, or is it just you, or what is it?
It's basically me, my wife, and my aunt. And what I do is I go to various conferences and speak about my story and try to end that stigma associated with mental health and substance use.
From a personal perspective, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
That kind of
Crisis intervention team training, CIT training. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm heavily involved in about 4 or 5 counties in my area where I teach officer wellness for all of those courses.
Yeah.
It sort of just started out trying to help a few guys I worked with, trying to pay it forward, and it sort of morphed into what it is now. To on occasion,
Do you go to dispatch conferences? Like, do you put in calls for paper at APCO International? And
absolutely.
There was the big one out in Colorado called Navigator through the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. It happened in August of 23. So do you include yourself in those and hopefully
absolutely,
or at least the state side? Because the big ones are kind of hard to get selected.
I am a sponge. I just love how our brains work and don't work sometimes. And so I will go to any kind of conference I can get my hand on that I can learn of. I heard Doug's coming to North Carolina tomorrow, I guess it was. If I wasn't in the process of selling my home and buying a home just south of Wilmington, I probably would have tried to go out there. So I love going to these conferences. I love meeting people. I love the networking aspect. I love gaining that knowledge, and I like to share that knowledge that I've, obtained over the years. And it wasn't until I sort of broke myself that I really jumped in with 2 feet. A lot of times people say, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do? And I've learned that it's not only the what, but the why.
Yeah.
When you can figure out the why and the what, you're unstoppable. And I know what my what is, and I absolutely know what my why is. And I'm hitting the ground with both feet running.
That's cool.
I like what you said about before you would look at people and go, what's wrong with them? And now it's more of a what basically broke them or what happened to them. And I think in the last 3 or 4 years, there's really been a shift that way.
Yeah.
And the way people are looking at mental illness or behavioral health or whatever you want to say. I think it's more of a what has happened to this person to bring them to this point versus looking at them as they have a disease or there's something wrong with them or they're on drugs.
Absolutely.
So,
and you said it best. I do believe that the first responder culture as a whole is more acceptant of substance use or mental health concerns. And I always, when I'm talking, I always sort of say it's like a big ocean tanker ship crossing the ocean. You can't stop those things on a dime. So we have to slow down. We have to initiate sort of that turn. Then we have to get going up again to speed. And depending on what department and what part of the country you are in, I know we're all at least slowing down. Some are already starting to turn, and there's a lot that have already started getting going again. And that's reassuring.
Wow.
But you have to have that buy-in. You have to have the complete, utter buy-in from the top as well as from the bottom. And
that is sometimes very difficult to get. I know from my experience of years ago that a lot of people in higher positions than me and wearing uniforms and stuff would have a real hard time believing it's that hard on people because they're like, you're inside of a building. What could possibly happen?
And I'm gonna go against that because we were very fortunate at my agency that getting a clinician on staff was one of that time director's top priorities.
So cool.
Excellent.
And I mean, he created and said, look, I said the public, what do you call it? the group, peer support.
Peer support.
I'm thinking public safety, but you talked about scatterbrain, Stephen. So
It's all good.
but you talked about peer support. He's the one that really said, "Okay, we need to revamp it. We need to revise it."
It's
really
so great to have
with
somebody
it.
like
Yeah.
that compared to somebody like I worked with initially. And, it's just, you get this mindset of where people are just stuck in what they believe. And I'm like Stephen, because for many years I thought, people suck it up, man. Come on. It's no big deal. And it's like, my last couple of years, I am a total believer in peer support and all that stuff. Now I'm like, oh my God, that stuff is real. That stuff actually does work. So how do people get a hold of you, Stephen? They want to get a hold of the last couple of minutes here. How do people get a hold of you if they need to talk?
I'm on social media, hashtag, and you have to spell it out. You can't do the little number sign or whatever on Facebook and Instagram.
So you have to write out the word hashtag.
Have to write out the word hashtag, and then Buddy Check is one word.
Okay.
From there, my cell phone number's on there. They can always, and I always tell people, you can call me any time of day, any day of the week. You might want to text me first, because if I don't recognize the number, I may not answer it. But like you said, I have, it's part of my way of thinking. I have to pay it forward.
Yeah.
If I don't, it would be a slap in the face to all those people that supported me when I was going through my dark time. So
Man, I'll tell you what, it's a powerful thing, and I'm so glad we met you at that FOP. And
Absolutely.
I was like, we left that place going, this is somebody we got to have on our podcast, because
not to mention the food was delicious.
Well, it was good. So I was saying,
Yeah.
it was good. And the drinks. But anyway, we're really glad that you came by with us today. And hopefully, if you're all listening out there, go check out hashtag Buddy Check. I'll spell it all out. Hashtag Buddy Check. And go see what he's offering out there, and go get a hold of him if you need to have that kind of thing out there. So, Joe, tell us about where we stand as far as social media on our broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We are making a huge difference, and thanks to everybody for tuning in and listening. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we're even on TikTok, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform and join the 22,000 people that have listened in the other 40 countries. So take a listen.
40 countries, 22,000 podcast plays. That is something great.
And
out
season
there.
4.
And yes, we just started season 4. Yes, we're just starting. I haven't even put our first broadcast out yet for season 4, but 3 years in, season 4 starts right away. So thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate everybody. Thanks for coming by, Steve. Everybody else, go out and make it a great day, because we all will. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by your friends at Watson Consoles. We're celebrating dispatchers and showing our appreciation by providing a free special gift. Visit watsonconsoles.com/badge to claim yours. That's watsonconsoles.com/badge.